podcast dedicated to female voices and leadership in tech. God, I'm slow today. I'm your host, Emma Ross, and I'm joined today by the amazing Marla. Marla, please introduce yourself for our listeners.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's really an honor to be interviewed by you, and it's been great meeting you and getting to know you better. So I am the founder of a company called Ossa, and Ossa is a technology platform that essentially enables more effective campaign management for advertisers, brands, creators. We just make the whole process a lot easier. And recently moved into the tech space. Prior to that, we were a network, but we can talk about that. But that's really my focus now, is getting this technology to a point where people realize that it's really helping their lives and making their work lives much more efficient.
That is really remarkable in terms of a mission. And it's been definitely my pleasure to meet you, not the other way around. Absolutely.
Thank you, Emma.
And one of the things like I wanted to kind of start us with is talking about the motivation, kind of like the drive behind building all of these platforms to really make life easier for creators. And I think that this is not even your first, from what I've seen, from what I know, this is not your first company and your first endeavor. And you really have been on the forefront of creating companies to support creators, especially women. So I would love to hear more about that.
Thank you. So, had a corporate background, other startups, whatnot, but I started Ossa. It was around 2018. I had a platform prior to Ossa called Like a Boss Girls, which was a content platform for women. And speaking with my team, they suggested that I start a podcast, which I was horrified. I had no desire to do so, but I did and fell in love with podcasting. Just think it's the coolest thing in the world. And then we did some research to try to figure out the representation of podcasters and women in podcasting. At that point in time, I think the number was only 22 or 23% of all podcasts were hosted by women. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I want to do something about it. So Ossa started as a network. We were a network focused on supporting and elevating underrepresented voices, specifically women. We grew the network to around 1,800 podcasts, and my focus was to help women make money. That was really my focus, to get their voice out and help them monetize. But what became very apparent as we were going through the process of managing campaigns with 20, 30 spreadsheets, it was a disaster. We couldn't keep the information straight. We would lose data. I call it the Scotch tape and paper clip phase. Mm-hmm. So I realized I was losing money, and spoke with my team, and they said, you should develop an app. I'm like, oh, sure. Like, I didn't know what that would involve. So, but the objective was to automate the campaign management process, to smooth it out so that our team could focus on things that really mattered, like getting deals and helping women creators more specifically. So we, decided so we built up the platform, and then I realized, oh, you know what? This is really interesting. I think I can actually be more impactful in this space versus, running the network. So last year, what we did was we took the network and we created a joint venture with Culture Media. So the network is now called Culture Podcast Network. I still own 50% of it, but they're really good at managing the networks and growing it. So all good. And we decided to focus specifically on the technology.
That's a very interesting transition. I am curious about the challenges that you found during that journey of helping women monetize and kind of spread their word. What do you find is the most, or maybe unique challenges that women in particular face trying to build podcasts as a business? Or are there no specific challenges that are unique to women? It's just shared challenges to all?
So I remember when we first started, reading some research, and there was some information about women in podcasting. Specifically, I think women were just learning how to use their voice in this medium, and it was pretty daunting. Men took the lead very early. You had all these like sports shows and whatnot. I think that also women, we wear many, many hats. So as you know, managing a podcast is a full-time job and a half. So I think it just took a while for women to specifically understand, wait a minute, if I really want to do this, this has to be a business, or it could be a hobby. That's great. But if you want to make money, you have to focus on this as a business. Mm-hmm. So I think that was very challenging. The feedback I also got was because women were starting to enter this medium, again, it was just 22%, there was a lack of knowledge. Well, how do I grow my show? What do I do? How do I get sponsors? Who do I talk to? So in the early days of Ossa, we provided a lot of guidance, and we did programming and whatnot to help women understand the business of podcasting as well as the mechanics of podcasting.
I understand. That makes sense. And that lack of knowledge is something that we see across board. Also, from
exactly.
If men has access to specific knowledge, and they have mates and like other connections, and women don't have that, it's much harder for them to even imagine, how do I get started? And that really can be quite a blocker. I think another interesting bit that we actually discovered, part of what we do, is we have discovered that women hosts tend to have more women listening to them. Basically, men listen to women less, but women listen to both men and women. So there is a bias in listenership that less men listen to women podcasts. So it's harder to a degree to grow a show for women. It's not 100%. It's not like cover all for every. There are exceptions to this rule. This is just general thing that we have found when we do research, because we're an audience platform. We have found that the host being female does impact who we listen to, and there are unique challenges that we find align with that. We're currently doing more research. It will come out soon, so there might be more insights that we are able to share, but it is quite, as a society, we could do better at listening to women.
Which will absolutely
which will help women.
And I think in this medium, part of the issue is women learning how to modulate their voices. And there's definitely a bias when men listen to women's voices. So I think there's some learned, not behavior, but details that women need to understand when they're actually recording a podcast about how to modulate their voice, how to communicate with their voice. And for men seem to be, they started ahead of us. So we're trying to catch up. I think, however, podcasting is the absolute most perfect medium for women. I can't think of a better medium. It's, the connection that you can make with your audience is amazing. So that's why I really wanted to jumpstart Ossa and get things going for women.
That's a wonderful goal, and you already made a huge way since we started. I'm looking forward to see what comes next. And I think we all can work towards that goal. In terms of, even if we just think of our own biases and consider our own biases and how do we address them, and just be more cognizant that they exist to begin with, we can do much better. But that's what I aspire to do. I'm not saying I'm perfect.
No, I hear you. I agree.
I aspire. I'm also curious, you had quite a career, and I'm really curious to some of those early lessons that you learned in your career in terms of leadership, and what is leadership, and what is maybe good and bad leadership look like, and if there's anything that you took on and that you keep to this day.
Well, what I always said was, I'm only as good as the team supporting me. I realized early on, I don't know everything. I can't do everything. So what I would do is I would hire people with complementary skills. So that was really important to me. No ego. You do that better than I do. Let's work together. So that was extremely important to me. I think what I also did was really focus on the mentorship piece, because I was working with a lot of younger women at the time that were coming into the workforce. And, I was working in big companies that can be pretty darn scary. So working with these women, showing them the ins and outs of dealing with corporate nonsense and helping them to accelerate their growth in the company. So that was all very, very important to me. I really felt that was a key part of my job, was to mentor women, mentor men as well. But again, I was successful if my team was successful. And that's really important. And that was a lesson I learned very early on.
That's a wonderful and really important lesson that we should all aspire to implement and like have that mentality. I think that complementary skill set are something that I talk about a lot as well.
Right.
How do we maximize the value, even just resource value? Just think of it as a game. How do you get the most out of whatever bag of like treasure of all the ingredients you have? And like I think of it almost like a Hello Fresh box. I don't know, like even like
Right.
some sort of like
I love that.
A box of ingredients, and we need to make a meal, the best meal we can make. So how do we maximize the best that we can do with that? Maybe because we get those like vegetables in a box and we like try to.
Oh, I love this analogy. This is amazing. But yeah, I totally agree with you.
And try to just make the most out of it. And I spend a lot of time trying to think, okay, so what's the weakness? What's the strength? How do we improve the weaknesses? But
Exactly.
But also like really double down on the strength, because they're better at it. So they should do what they're great at, not force them into this box of what their job is supposed to be.
And also part of that is, in some instances, working with my direct reports, that my team, women and men, guiding them. Sometimes it's not the right role, and helping them figure out really what they want to do with their lives, career-wise, and helping to push them in the right direction. That's not always easy, but I think that's an important part of leadership.
I do agree, and I had a bit of experience there, not as much, of trying to find, like kind of go on a journey with someone in my team to try to find the right path. It's not always the most obvious. So you have to go through a few discovery processes, at least in my experience. And then eventually they find something they're super passionate about, which then it's quite rewarding to see, and like they're happy, and therefore you're happy as well.
Exactly.
I'm kind of curious as well, because you mentioned how important mentorship was for you. Did you also have really strong, good mentors as part of your early days that you felt really inspired by?
So, sort of.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think that like sort of having mentors was more of an impetus for me to actually start thinking myself as a mentor and working more towards mentorship. I worked in corporate many years ago, and things have changed a lot. Mentorship was not as important then. So yeah, there were definitely people who supported me in my career, but overt mentorship, it was pretty inconsistent. So I felt that it was my responsibility to play it forward.
I do understand. I don't know if like early on, if I had precisely that. I had some attempts at that, but it's, as you said, a bit of inconsistent. See there, and it wasn't as clear cut, and it wasn't as maybe promoted, or even when I don't know how long ago I started, about 15 years ago, I think. And I don't think it was as much of a thing as it is today. So if we see the last 5 years, it's really progressing in terms of what is what is expected, what is acceptable, what is available, the resources available, and that's really fantastic to see.
Yeah, I think it's important also because when you hire someone, you're making a tremendous financial investment as well as an emotional investment. So you want that investment to make sense and to pay off. Exactly. So that's the business side of it. And then, of course, the emotional side of it is creating connections with these people and wanting to see them develop and grow.
Absolutely. And I think that if you think about it that way, it also makes like it just rationalize and like just makes sense.
Exactly.
And it is in the end of the day for they need to stay with you. They need to bring more to the table for this all to be successful. So I completely agree. Sometimes I wish I could ask my team because I don't like I should just ask them how they feel. I think from their perspective, what they have said to me before is sometimes the most inspiring thing is just have an example of what they would want to do or want to be, and like kind of a living example. That I seem to be somewhat doing. And then the rest of it, I will aspire to continue improving as I go.
I think it's also challenging because I feel it's important to have collaboration and to be collaborative. So when I'm working with team members, I may be the most senior person, but I also want to make sure that they have a voice. So it's that delicate balance of, yeah, you take it, but here's when I have to step in. Here's the leadership that I have to bring. And it's not easy at all. Not at all.
So some things is mostly defining responsibility. Like you're better at it. So you know what? You go figure it out. This is the challenge. This is the thing.
Exactly.
This is your scope. You go figure it out. I'm going to be here middle end to review, approve, or give you the feedback, some guidance there. But I want you to sort it out. That's part of the spot. Both is part of the reason why you can tell it like this is, and
Exactly.
also you're better at it. You do it. Switching directions. To maybe a different aspect of finding balance. So I think the company is quite technical and it's obviously it's a tech first product.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find that balance between the human element and the human first and the human center, and then being very tech heavy solution? What is your approach towards that?
So the way we think about our technology is that it removes or makes less the friction that a company will experience when they are trying to get the stuff done. So we help remove barriers. We're not replacing human beings because it's still very important to have the human element. It's just what we try to do is take away the things that make people crazy, that are not efficient, that are not productive. They're necessary, but to make that part easier so that companies, brands, networks, whatnot, can focus more on their creators and their business and the art of creating versus spreadsheets. So that's what we do. We remove friction. We make it easier. That's our job.
That's a wonderful mission. And I think that's kind of like really a mission statement right there. I think from I would say a lot of the things that we discussed, especially early on, but still to today, is like human-centric design. And where does the human fit in? And as you said, it's about making their life better, easier, smoother, less headaches, less craziness, less noise, so they can do what they do best. To be honest,
I'm sorry. The other thing is that we created the technology because we had the need. So it's driven from consumer need, the way we structured the technology, which I think is the best way to structure technology. That's what we did. So there was definitely a personal aspect of design. What would it take? What does the technology have to do so that our lives are easier? And we push that through the development phase.
I think you're absolutely right. That should be the only way of developing almost anything. Like if you don't develop it from a need, you can develop technology, but developing technology in isolation means normally it's not a good fit. And then you will go through a lot of pains and a lot of processes to make it a good fit and to actually listen to the users who actually use it. Anything that was developed with the user in mind,
correct,
with the user together, I think will 99.99999, a lot of percent, will be better and easier to start and have a lot less friction than something like, you know what, we did it in isolation because we thought it was cool. So that's the kind of a startup 101.
Exactly. I want to go back to the mentorship piece for a minute, if I may. I think what's really important for listeners is if you don't have a mentor, go get one. Ask people for help. There's no shame in asking for help. You will actually be better for it if you ask for help, and you will end up creating some pretty amazing relationships. So don't be afraid to raise your hand. And it may be within your company, outside your company. Mentorship comes in all different forms. So I think it's important for people to say, okay, I'm not proud. I need some help. Let me talk to someone who's been there or who may know how to help me. So to me, that's very important. So I wanted to insert that thought.
I mean, I completely agree. And if it helps anyone, the one email that I get the most response for is other like I need help, like basically a highlight of like small favor, need help, anything around that. I always get the highest response rate.
Right.
So people love to help a lot more. Like, you think that this is an imposition, but people are much more open if you're open to ask for help. And the biggest strength is being vulnerable. So there is nothing weak about it. There's nothing small about it. Being able to be vulnerable is one of the bravest and strongest thing, I think.
I really agree.
It took me a long time to discover that.
It takes all of us a long time. We all have our pride, but then you have to, at the end of the day, you have to produce. And if you need help, you need help. Ask for it.
Exactly. So I really aspire to do that and to just be honest and to say, like, look, any chance that you can help me with this or bigger, or can I run something by you? And the first thing I did, I was going to buy, like last year, I bought my house. No, let's see, 2 years ago, I bought my house. And I was a year or something in the UK. I was clueless about buying, like, it was my first house that I bought, and I was clueless about purchasing in the UK, which is very odd and have many rules. And the first thing I did was contact 3 people I knew purchased a house recently,
Right.
and asked for, like, I need information. And now a friend of mine is also in the process of purchasing, and this is kind of like I now try to pay that forward.
Exactly.
Giving her all the information I have previously received and try to help as much as I can, because it is a circle of, like, you get something and then you try to move it forward. That's the best example I have, but it's not related to work. Is the one time I really went very direct about it. It was like, help, please. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Please come save me.
Right.
But that was my experience. What was the one time you asked for help, but you know what, this really paid off?
Honestly, I ask for help all the time, especially because I guess I'm considered a non-technical founder. So I really do rely on my team for technology guidance. Now, I may say, hey, why don't we, or can we do this? And they will say, are you crazy? Or, yeah, we could do that, but here are the implications. So that's really where I ask for help, around the technology piece. Again, it's also really about collaboration. So I'm not going to develop a strategy for my business without having my team be involved in it. So, that's the way I operate.
I love that. And I think that we should all try to aspire to take that into, like, having the multiple voices and then try to distill it into something clear. Which is both the challenge and the good part about it. From your experience of the journey that we went through with women, especially around podcasting, but in general, what do you think has really improved so far? And what do you think we still have maybe a bit of a way to go in terms of support or in terms of accessibility from also a female founder perspective?
Right. When I first started, there weren't as many female founders or female executives in the podcast industry. And, that's changed. There are more and more women who take leadership roles or are founders in this industry. So that's an improvement. My sense is that as a woman, even a man, experiences what this medium is all about and realizes its incredible potential, then they realize this is for me. This is what I need to do. So I think more and more people with diverse backgrounds are actually coming into the industry, which I think is wonderful.
I mean, do you see any area of improvement still pending, or just continue on the journey?
So from a founder perspective, and this is really for all women founders, it's really tough to get investment money. It's incredibly tough. So getting investment from VCs, I think about 2.something% of all VC money goes to women founders. Angel investors, it's a higher percentage. Those checks tend to be a little smaller. Yeah. So it's about getting the capital. And I don't know what language we need to speak to be able to convince investors, male investors, female investors, we know what we're doing. We have all this experience. Please take a chance on us. So to me, that imbalance, and those stats have not changed, which is to me nuts. And so that to me has to be an area of focus, which is if we want more women to lead, if we want more underrepresented voices to lead, we need money. Yeah. And we need that kind of financial support.
I think I'll be very interested at some point to understand what is it? Is it just the bias? Is it specific language? Is it tendencies that women have? Because in general, women do tend to be a bit more conservative in numbers, in estimations, all of that. Not necessarily to be less successful, they're just more conservative in their estimation.
Right.
So all of those things are quite interesting. I'm very curious about it's probably a combination of many things. Right. But I have met several female founders. Some of them have a lot of challenges raising funds. Some of them had a bit of an easier time, but I think it's definitely something that we've discussed almost every single time I spoke to a founder, especially female founder. Now, funding is an issue across board to everyone.
Correct.
Yes. Anyone with a startup, anyone with a company, it's an issue. But I think, like as you said, women have probably a slightly harder time.
And I think overall, and you and I both know this, which is so hard for me to believe, the world at large still does not really get the impact of podcasting. And study after study, stats after stats show how impactful podcast advertising is. So that has to change as well. And I think that's a part of this.
I mean, I am excited. I'm excited to see podcasts growing year on year, and even when audio is taking a bit of a hit, podcast seems to still be on the growth. But there's a lot of room to grow.
Right.
I think that as podcast is also becoming more streamlined, having more of the tools, becoming more easy to be measured or used across the brands in the same way.
Exactly.
That should also help, because it's no longer this niche thing over here, but rather something put into your standard media plans. But yeah, we have a journey to go. Part of it, my side, is trying to make this report and other data and make it accessible to brands to understand podcasting better.
Exactly. And you do a good job. And what you do is very important for the industry. So thank you, Emma.
It's not me. This is definitely a number 8 thing. And we have an amazing team here, which I'm very grateful to be part of. To be honest, this is the longest job I've ever had.
Mhm.
So I've moved companies. No, I mean, I'm not a, I don't do, I haven't skipped or I haven't moved very quickly and like any point in my past, but this is the longest I've ever stayed with a company. And I think that's for several reasons. One, the people; second, what we
Mhm.
do, how interesting and engaging it has been to go on this journey with Number Eight. So I'm very fortunate for the company I'm in and to get to work with amazing people. I have partners like you. I have amazing partners. What else can I ask for?
Thank you, Emma.
Like anytime. That's not a compliment. That's just honest. And that kind of leads us also to our last question, and my favorite, which is superpowers. And I love to ask anyone, all women, of what do you think is your unique advantage? What is your superpower?
This is my perspective, but I think women have more resilience. Um, we soldier on. We try to do whatever we can to push through barriers. Now, I'm not saying men don't do this, but I think this is very true of women in business. It's, we don't let things stop us. We go, go, go. So that's important. I also think that women tend to be more empathetic. And when you're in be it a large company, small company, startup, whatnot, the empathy is important because you're creating relationships with people, with partners, with customers. And that empathy is so important because you need to understand everyone's motivation. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. So to me, the empathy is also, I think that's also a really big part of it.
That's, I think, like one, I completely agree. And regardless of your position within the company, that ability to just put yourself in someone else's shoes,
Mm-hmm.
even in sales, like like it's just being able to understand the world from their perspective. It's such a powerful tool. It's such a
Mm-hmm.
powerful tool to understand them and what they're feeling and what they're thinking, which I agree with you that women do, in average, have a tendency to be stronger at. As well as I think women are better with pain, I think. And that's part of the resilience. And like we, better for worse, we experience it more. We experience more reject. Like it's just harder. So
Mm-hmm.
develop thicker skin.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Especially early on when, no, I know about myself. I don't know about you, and you please share with me your experiences. I started in cybersecurity, which is extremely male dominated, and I was quite young and was managing factories in Taiwan and doing all kind of weird things. And I was telling men very sometimes much older than me what to do. And then I remember coming back and saying my opinions and got screamed at by someone twice my age and like completely humiliated. And then you have to learn how to get up and dust yourself up and carry on. But the language that they allow themselves to use sometimes is quite, it's a lot. So that can be quite difficult. The thing
Mm-hmm.
is, you overcome. Not that I'm saying that this should be the norm.
Exactly.
If you do overcome that, what you do develop along that is a very thick skin and ability to kind of like maybe block some of that. Like, okay, whatever, sure. And then one of my biggest personal achievement is to be able to then the same team that like hated whatever got really upset with me when I first started ended up working the closest to me
Mm-hmm.
and rely on me a lot and work together and will call me up for help. And that was a personal achievement for me to get there. That process taught me a lot and I still implement those. I don't know if you have any story.
Well, I would say in general, when I first started in the podcast industry, it was very heavily male oriented, very heavy male radio oriented. So when I would talk to people, introduce myself, have conversations, I think they would look at me like, what is she doing? Why is she here? Like, she has no right to be here. But that's part of resilience. So consistently, I try to forge these relationships and stay connected. And I think that's really helped. Do men have to do that? I don't know. But I know that that was my experience, which was like, you don't belong here, lady. But I think I've done a good job in overcoming it.
Definitely done an amazing job. And with that really very positive way of ending the show, we're coming to an end. So I would like to thank you again for joining
Thank you.
us, Marla. This has been amazing. And I'm so grateful to have the experience to learn from you about your journey. And I feel really inspired. So I think everyone else will as well.
Thank you, Emma.
Absolutely.
And it's been a privilege speaking with you and love partnering with you as well. This is women supporting women. You know, we all rise.
Absolutely. And I would like to say thank you to all of our listeners for joining in for another episode of Women Lifting Women. For this episode and many more, please tune in to www.womenliftingwomen.io. And I can't wait to hear you or join you all with the next episode. And thank you so much for this one.